For today's cohort definition, I'm going to use criteria from patient, diagnosis, and predicted outcome. For this data set in particular, each patient record will have one or many diagnosis records, and each of those diagnosis records will have one or more predicted outcomes. I already have a criteria based off of date of birth, but I want to add for this set of patients a criteria that they had a diagnosis before the year 2018 for a C50.8 disease. To do this, I'll click the cohort filters and add cohort filter on diagnosis date and define it as before 2018 and click apply filter. In addition to being before this year, I need to also specify that for this year as an add additional criteria, the ICD-10 code. When I click the add additional criteria plus button, I can come to the ICD-10 code and click add as filter and type in my C50.8 disease code and click apply filter. Now I have already narrowed down this cohort to 2 individuals. For this cohort, I also want to add an additional criteria that the patient has had at any point in time a positive predicted outcome. To add that type of a filter, I come up here and click the Add Filter button, come to the Predicted Outcome field, click Add as Filter. I select the positive outcome and click Add Filter. Now I can see that it is still both of the patients as part of this cohort definition. The definition for patients born before 1974 who were diagnosed before 2018 for C50.8, and at any point in time those patients had a positive predicted outcome. Since both patients are included, I may want to define a second cohort for patients with the same criteria for date of birth and diagnosis, but that on that specific diagnosis, they had a positive predicted outcome. To do this, I'll start out by simply creating a copy using the cohort compare functionality. Now I'll remove this predicted outcome criteria using the clear filter group X button and come back down to just the criteria for patients born before 1974 who had the diagnosis of a C50.8 disease before the year 2018. Now, instead of clicking the Add Filter button, I come in line and click the Add Additional Criteria Plus button. When I select that button, you may notice that the field criteria or field selector is narrowed down. This is because only certain fields are eligible to be added in combination with the diagnosis. Those fields we can see are related to patient's diagnosis and predicted outcomes. Now I select the outcome prediction, add as filter, and I specify the positive criteria. For this copy cohort, we can now see that it is down to just one patient, so it is now different than the previous cohort defined. This means that the copy cohort, where the positive outcome is linked to the diagnosis, is different than the cohort where the positive outcome is unlinked, letting us deduce that that positive outcome in the original cohort is actually linked to a different diagnosis. So in summary, my original cohort is for all patients that had the diagnosis of C50.8 before 2018 and had at any point in time a positive predicted outcome, while my copy cohort has that same born before 1974 criteria, but had a C50.8 diagnosis before 2018, for which that diagnosis they had a positive predicted outcome. Now that I've defined my cohorts, I can save them and pass them on for further downstream analysis.